This video sponsor, Surfshark VPN, offers an all-in-one tool to help strengthen your online privacy and security. Get an extra 4 months when you sign up using offer code SCALEUP at checkout. More details after the video. Gamers, forgive me the face cam jump scare, but today's a big day because 1 year ago, we launched This Week in Videogames.com, and a lot's happened since then, so I wanted to give you a quick update on how it's been going, and also some info on where it's going to go in the future. So, let's do it, shall we? Around 3 years ago now, I dreamed of a website with no ads, no sponsored articles, no AI written garbage, no clickbait headlines, no pop-up video players, for love of God, just an old-fashioned website unencumbered by all of the cruft that makes modern web such a hellscape. It was a very tall order, and there would have been no way that I could have done it on my own. Luckily, Edmund Tran joined the team to lead the initiative, and there's really no one in Australia who was more qualified to do that, so we were very lucky to get him. Together, we designed the site and worked with an agency to build it. Core to the philosophy was the desire to make something that we would actually want to use ourselves. We wanted an outlet that would report the most interesting news of the day without feeling the need to report on every single story possible. We wanted to hear from industry experts. We wanted features from writers who were given the time to properly research and work a story. We wanted it to look really nice, and we wanted it to be really convenient, supporting things like RSS feeds and regular free and premium newsletters so news could be delivered right to your inbox. For a site like this, content is king, and that's why we recruited a number of industry experts to provide regular columns on the state of the industry. Daniel Robson was the former managing editor of IGN in Japan. He spent over a decade in that role and still works in the games industry over there. His monthly Parallax Japan column provides an on-the-ground view of the Japanese gaming industry with some really fascinating insights that you just won't find anywhere else. Victoria Tran is the communications director for Inner Sloth, the people behind both Among Us and their brand new indie publishing label, Outer Sloth. She has a monthly column on our site devoted to a behind-the-scenes look at indie game development, and her access to those game makers has meant she's been able to illuminate so many topics while also providing her own expert perspective. Opinion also matters to us, and Nathan Brown certainly has plenty of opinions. He is, after all, the former editor of Edge magazine, the most respected gaming print publication ever, and he's a columnist on our site, sharing his perspective on the state of the games industry. And that's just our regular columnist, where we've also published over 130 long-form feature articles, many of them commissioned by some of the best independent freelance writers still writing about games, so that you can hear from a wide array of different voices on a range of different topics, including deep dives on stuff you probably won't find at the big established mastheads. The core of our team, though, is now 4 people strong. We started with just Ed, but your support meant we could hire Maddie Agnew and the late Patrick Dane, and this year we've welcomed 2 new team members, Jamie Hoare and James Wood. Together, that team of people published 980 news stories this year, with the sum total of 0 ads sitting next to them, 0 sponsored articles, just good, clean copy that's easy to read on both desktop and mobile. And by the way, we don't hide our sources or try to trap you in circular links around our website. We hate that shit. And we've been out there breaking news too. When all that stuff with Larian and generative AI happened last year, we spoke to a number of concept artists about their views on the subject, and that reporting really moved that conversation forward. We broke the news that Shuhei Yoshida said that Jim Ryan fired him because we were at the event where he said it. We met with Chris Roberts and we asked him, when the hell is Star Citizen coming out? And more recently, we broke the news that Microsoft plans to stick with the id Tech engine despite decimating the ranks of id Software. All of this work made people sit up and pay attention, and this year at the Australian IT Journalism Awards, This Week in Videogames.com won the award for Best Gaming Coverage and a separate award for Best Independent Outlet. We hadn't even been in business for a year yet, and we were already getting that sort of recognition. Incredibly proud of the team for that. But at no point were we ever resting on our laurels, and that's why we added the highly requested comment section to each article so you can start having conversations with people in the community about what's going on. And we took that idea even further recently with the launch of the official This Week in Videogames.com Discord. It's already got a few hundred people in there, and the conversation has been fantastic. If you want a place where you can discuss games and the industry with like-minded people, I really recommend checking it out. I think you'll like it. But we are still not stopping there. Believe it or not, we're also rolling out some short form video because we know that's how a lot of people get their news these days. This is actually being headed up by Austin. And if you look up This Week in Video Games on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram, you'll see his handsome mug serving up news, impressions, and mini reviews and more. Again, same philosophy over there as on the site. High quality stuff that's informative and to the point. No clickbait, no nonsense. I'll leave a link to those short form handles below. So it's been a big year, but I'm really not exaggerating when I say that this is just the very, very beginning. When I started this, I really did imagine this to be like a 20+ year project. I wanted something built on really strong, enduring principles that would serve it long into the future. So far, I think we're doing it, but I think there's still a lot more that we want to accomplish. We do want to continue to grow our team so we can provide you with the best possible original reporting. We want to bring in more expert columnists. We want to look at the ways that we're serving you news, features, and opinions so that you can consume them in the way that you want to. And we want to keep all of it 100% ad-free forever. And that's only possible because of your support. So the biggest thing I want to say at this point is thank you. We didn't know that this would work, but it did because you guys showed up and supported us. Even if you're not a paying supporter, by the way, and you just signed up to the free tier or you just clicking on articles, That still helps us, by the way, so thank you. But if you are a paying supporter or a benefactor, then that's huge because your financial support is funding this truly independent ad-free site, and you're funding all the great journalism that this team is doing. If you are a paid supporter, we hope you're enjoying your ad-free version of the news show each and every week, your exclusive weekly newsletter, your unrestricted access to all columns and features, and the community you can interact with, both in the comment section and on the official Discord. If you're not a paying supporter and any of that interests you, then good news, we're running a sale. You can always trial a supporter membership for free for 7 days, no questions asked. But if you want to sign up for the annual tier, we're offering a 10% discount for all new signups for the next month. If you're someone who really values good games coverage, I really think that our supporter tier offers a lot of value, and I promise you that it's only going to offer even more value in the future as we continue to invest in the site, in our content offering, and in our team. 1 year in, and we are just getting started. So join us, won't you? Visit thisweekinvideogames.com and sign up for free to access our weekly newsletter or become a paying supporter for all the benefits I just listed. Again, a huge thank you to all of you. We literally could not have done it without you, and we're excited to keep on keeping on. So that's it. That's all I got. Let's get to the show, shall we? Let's say we kick off with a look at Marathon, that old chestnut. How are things going over there? Well, for one thing, the game director just left the studio, so I guess they're not going very well. On the 17th of July, Joe Ziegler announced his departure on Twitter, writing, quote, "I'll be heading to something new somewhere else, and we'll update you on where and what soon. I just want to say a deeply heartfelt thank you to all of you for supporting me and Marathon in our windy mission to bring a dark and terrifying space survival frontier to your screen. The mission will continue in new and surprising ways, so stay tuned for what this team has in store for you," end quote. Ziegler joined Bungie in 2022 as a designer on Destiny before being appointed as game director of Marathon in 2024 after the previous director Christopher Barrett was dismissed from Bungie over allegations of workplace misconduct. Was Ziegler a good fit as game director? I think at that point in time, yeah. Prior to his tenure at Bungie, he worked at Riot Games for 12 years as a designer and director on Valorant, using much of that competitive shooter background to guide the direction of Marathon. And that did result in a very tightly constructed, well-made extraction shooter. But it was ultimately a game aimed at a niche competitive audience, and it was never meant to be Bungie's main game. But now it kind of has to be, after all resources were diverted away from Destiny and that team laid off. In that sense, I think it makes sense that Ziegler is stepping away now, because Bungie are obviously scrambling to pivot Marathon in a different direction with the launch of the new PvE mode, which we'll talk about in a moment. Replacing Ziegler is the current assistant game director Del Schaff III. Schaff's been employed by Bungie ever since 2011, and before working on Marathon, he served as a designer on Destiny before becoming senior design lead and design director on Destiny 2. Meanwhile, Julia Narden will take over as Marathon's creative director. She was most recently narrative director on Marathon and previously a narrative lead on several Destiny projects, including The Final Shape, and before joining Bungie in 2019 was also narrative lead on Austin's favorite game, Guild Wars 2. So yeah, under this new management, it's safe to say Marathon's going to look pretty different in the years to come, provided of course it lasts that long. One effort to attract new players is the launch of that aforementioned PvE mode called Vault Breaker, an experimental mode that will allow the game to work through the game's endgame zone cryo archive without the threat of other players, and with its own persistent progression system that makes it easier to push further with each run. How has this worked out for the game? Well, the update did boost the concurrent player count from an all-time low of 1,000 players up to a whopping 15,000 players. And look, that's not nothing, but it's probably not the numbers Bungie was hoping for. The population has already dropped to under 10k players after just a couple of days, and will likely sink lower as the season goes on. This strategy to sort of slowly turn Marathon into a PvE co-op shooter just seems really futile to me. Bungie already had a successful PvE game, and the entire point of Marathon was that it would pull in the PvP audience that Destiny was no longer catering to. Now Bungie are trying to make Marathon more like Destiny because obviously the PvP angle has not reached the critical mass of players required to keep the game alive. It all just seems really ass backwards, and honestly it just makes me mad because Destiny is gone and that team is gone, and Marathon is the only Bungie game we can play right now, and honestly I just don't want to play it, and I know I'm not alone in feeling that way. Pivoting now to some Xbox news, and following the widespread layoffs at Xbox, Bethesda have posted about their future plans for their major IPs such as The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Starfield, saying, quote, "We're investing more deeply in the worlds players love, giving creators a bigger role in shaping their experiences and bringing our teams closer together so we can get our games into your hands sooner, supporting them longer, and continue building them alongside you for decades to come," end quote. Surely a bit harder to do that after Asher Sharma just sacked hundreds of people, but anyway, let's move on. Despite its mixed critical reception, Bethesda assures people that, quote, "Starfield remains an important part of our future," end quote, hinting at plans for more DLC and updates as the game enters its third year. They also said that over 40% of players use the Creation Club to modify their experience, and they'll continue to support that. Fair enough. They then outlined the future of Fallout with several announcements, leading with, quote, "Fallout is one of our biggest priorities today. Fallout 5 remains our long-range destination. We have multiple Fallout projects in active development right now," end quote. What are those projects? Well, Fallout 76 apparently has an expansion planned for next year. It's titled Raven Rock and acts as a prequel story to Fallout 3. On that note, they also go on to say, quote, "While we're not announcing any dates today, we have been working on remasters for both Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas," end quote. Wouldn't surprise me if they go a similar route to the Oblivion remaster with the visual overhaul handled in Unreal Engine. Fingers crossed they properly optimize it this time though. As for the next original entry in the Fallout series, they didn't specifically name anything, but they did say, quote, "The Wasteland continues to expand as we team up once again with our longtime friends at Obsidian Entertainment. We're happy to confirm they're working with us on a new Fallout project. We'll have more to share in the future," end quote. This does line up with previous reports that Obsidian's Josh Sawyer was leading the next Fallout game, and given his history and the announcement of a New Vegas remaster, it's easy to assume they're working on a Fallout New Vegas 2, but that is of course just speculation. On the topic of studio collaborations, it was also announced that Bethesda Game Studios would be partnering closely with ZeniMax Online, one of the studios most impacted by the recent wave of layoffs, to work on, quote, "The Elder Scrolls franchise while continuing to deliver incredible new experiences for the Elder Scrolls Online," end quote. So that's no doubt relieving news for those still working at ZeniMax and of course the people who play Elder Scrolls Online. Finally, they gave a brief update on their biggest long-term projects, quote, "Our teams are now developing the Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 on Creation Engine 3, a shared technology platform we've been building since Starfield's launch. Fallout 5 is currently in pre-production. The Elder Scrolls 6 is our primary development focus today, with the majority of our team currently working on the next chapter of the franchise," end quote. This all comes at an interesting time for Bethesda boss man Todd Howard, who took an interview with Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, where he mused about various topics, including his potential retirement. He said he had previously thought in abstract terms about the concept of retirement, but now it doesn't even enter his mind because he's so excited about the things he's working on. Todd making very clear here that any sudden changes to his position will not be the result of him voluntarily seeking a quieter life. And look, all of this is broadly what we would have expected, and indeed, it's kind of what we should have expected long ago. It's quite ridiculous that Xbox didn't greenlight some sort of Fallout project to capitalize on the immense success of the TV show. It's quite ridiculous that the last Fallout release was Fallout 76 back in 2018. It's quite ridiculous that Fallout New Vegas 2 wasn't made like a decade ago, since it's an all-time Hall of Fame RPG, and a sequel to it is the most obvious no-brainer imaginable. We don't exactly know what the bottleneck here was, but whatever it was, Arsha seems to have unclogged it, and now the Fallout will flow freely. Hey, you know what might have been able to help get some new Fallout games out the door faster? The 25% of people you fired from Obsidian and the 400 people you fired from ZeniMax. Just a thought as we begin the 6 to 7 year wait for these newly announced projects to actually release. More Xbox news now because it just never ends with these guys, and they had a big exciting announcement this week. You can watch ads before you stream your games now. Okay, it's not quite as bad as it sounds, so do let me clarify. Right now, as part of your Gamepass subscription, you're able to stream games you own using xCloud. That's all cool. Well, this week, Xbox announced they're rolling out a new experimental feature that allows Xbox insiders who don't have Game Pass to also stream games they own via xCloud for free. But it's only for 1 hour sessions, and the trade-off is that you have to watch some ads before each new session begins. Now, to be clear, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with providing something for free in exchange for ads. Big shout out to this video sponsor, Surfshark VPN. But let's be real here. Do we really think that it just stops here for Xbox? I think this use case is so weirdly niche that I can't help but feel that this is more about Microsoft testing their own ad tech platform and the market demand for it, rather than testing how many consumers might be keen to stream games they already own for 1 hour in exchange for watching some ads. Like, if I was a betting man, I'd bet this is more of a test case for something like an ad-supported tier of Game Pass than the actual use case they've outlined here, and it remains to be seen whether or not something like that would be bad, because hey, if you get to play a game and all you have to do is watch some ads, then maybe that's great for people. But anyone who's used modern day Windows knows how bad the ads have gotten over there, and I do wonder how far Microsoft might take this technology once they've ironed out all the kinks and mapped the market demand. I guess we're gonna find out, whether we like it or not. Hey, speaking of Game Pass, this week saw a number of public figures in the industry weigh in on the impacts of the service on studios in the wake of recent studio closures. The MinMax podcast recently interviewed Mike Brown, founder and creative director of Maverick Games, and previously creative director at Playground Games on Forza Horizon 5. And when speaking about the state of Xbox, he said, quote, "I really think it's sad and I think it's really unfortunate because they've honestly invested a fortune in the concept of Game Pass as a service, which leads to loads of teams being acquired, lots of games being funded, loads of people getting jobs, all with a vision of getting regular games landing in the service for players. I think the reality is not enough people have subscribed to it at the prices they needed to pay in order to make the business viable, end quote. He then touched on Xbox's $69 billion investment in acquiring Activision Blizzard, among several other studios, and the difficulties of Gamepass to reconcile those expenses. Quote, "That's actually just really sad because now we're going to see studios getting shut down or spun off. Loads of people are going to lose their jobs. And that is honestly just a result of a well-meaning, player-focused concept of Xbox Game Pass not quite landing, and I think that's a real shame," end quote. Meanwhile, comments from Jason Schreier's sources have a less charitable outlook on the service. Speaking on the Triple Click podcast, he said, quote, "There are a lot of people out there in studio leadership within Xbox who absolutely detest Game Pass. They think it has destroyed the value of their games, that it has taken away value from all games in general, and has been a detriment to the games industry in those people's views," end quote. This was a sentiment echoed by an anonymous former Xbox studio lead speaking to Windows Central. Quote, "Giving games away for free in Game Pass from day one sends a message to consumers that the games don't have inherent market value. It creates an assumption that these titles could not sell on their own," end quote. And yeah, day one titles on Game Pass never really felt right, to be honest, at least not for the really big stuff. Day one AA titles was often great because it helped smaller titles find a player base in an increasingly competitive market space, but did we really need to give away Indiana Jones for like basically free? I don't think so, and I strongly suspect Microsoft will upend this model as they move back towards console exclusives, because if people don't feel like the games on the platform are valuable, they're going to be a lot less likely to fork out the money for the hardware to play them. All right, let's cap off the news with a lightning round now. Let's start with a brief update on one of Nintendo's many ongoing lawsuits. You might recall that last year Nintendo hiked the price of some of their hardware and accessories in response to the newly imposed US tariffs, but as of February this year, the US Supreme Court allowed businesses to apply for refunds on these tariffs, and so customers filed class action lawsuits arguing that Nintendo were effectively double profiting, and that the customers were owed these refunds since the tariff costs were passed on to them in those price hikes. Well, according to GameFile, Nintendo is now asking the court to dismiss this class action lawsuit. They argue, quote, "Nintendo or one of its retailers set a price for each product and consumers decided whether that price was worth paying. Those who bought Nintendo's products received exactly what they bargained and paid for, a console, game, and/or accessory at a price to which both parties agreed. Plaintiffs are not entitled to a rebate simply because of intervening legal developments related to tariffs," end quote. Nintendo also suggested they did not completely pass on the full impact of tariffs to consumers, saying, quote, "Unlike many of our market peers, Nintendo did not simply increase our product's price by the amount of tariffs it paid on the product or impose an across-the-board tariff surcharge. Instead, Nintendo imposed modest and selective price adjustments, and it chose to bear the cost of tariffs on some of its most popular products of 2025, including its flagship console, the Nintendo Switch 2, end quote. And look, it's probably going to be a really unpopular opinion to say this, but I agree with Nintendo here. This is 100% because of Donald Trump. No business could have predicted that these tariffs would be overturned by the courts, and businesses should not be expected to create specific pricing structures and/or onerous revenue tracking systems in case they one day might have to pay back some money to consumers that the government forced them to collect. This is not on Nintendo or any other company for this matter. This is on Donald Trump, and if anyone should be compensating people, it should be him. But obviously that's not going to happen, so anyway, what are you going to do? As we all know, price hikes have also occurred this year at the hand of the global RAM prices, and that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon, at least not according to Valve. When speaking on the matter with Bloomberg in an interview revolving around their Steam machine, Valve engineer Yazan Al-Dahayat said, quote, "Honestly, it's still getting worse. Just in case people were not aware, what people are seeing on retail shelves right now from our observation is lagging behind what we're seeing from a bulk supply by at least 3 to 6 months," end quote. Apparently, Valve are trying to build more Steam machines to meet the demand, but fellow Valve engineer Pierre-Loup Graffet said that it's a struggle to get components in, saying, quote, "We're basically building everything we can get our hands on. We're limited by the memory capacity for sure," end quote. Xbox's newly appointed VP of Engineering, Jared Palmer, has left the company. Pretty quick turnaround, to be honest. Jared had only been with the company a total of 10 months, joining in October of last year before being announced as Xbox's new VP of Engineering in May of this year, part of Asher Sharma's new leadership appointments. Where's he off to now? Well, he announced via LinkedIn that he's gone to join Cognition, a company best known for its AI-assisted software development tool Devon. Seems like he's got his heart set on AI, and you do you, I guess, man. A real blow to anyone hoping that gaming Copilot might make a comeback, though. Disco Elysium developer Zaum is set to lay off 32 people just 2 months after their latest release, Zero Parades. In a statement posted to Blue Sky on the 17th of July, the developer wrote that while Zero Parades received critical acclaim after its May 26 release, the title's, quote, "Commercial performance has not enabled us to sustain a studio of our current size. We have served redundancy or at-risk notices impacting up to 32 of our colleagues across all departments at Zaum Studio. Their work has made a lasting difference and left its mark on Zero Parades for Dead Spies and the studio as a whole," end quote. And yeah, Zero Parades was indeed very well received, achieving a strong 83 on OpenCritic and an 86% very positive Steam user score. So it is a shame to see that it didn't move enough copies to keep the developers employed. Many such cases this year, sadly. The IWGB has addressed these recent layoffs in a statement sent to This Week in Videogames.com, saying its, quote, sole focus at the current time is achieving the best possible outcome for those impacted by this round of redundancies, end quote. Man, imagine if the studio hadn't imploded and they could have just made Disco Elysium 2. Really sad to think what might have been. More bummer news to finish with. According to Deadline, the role of Kratos in the God of War Amazon series is being recast after actor Ryan Hurst was, quote, injured on the set of the PlayStation video game adaptation in late June. Hurst tore a bicep while doing a stunt on the show, as first reported by TMZ. According to sources, he has since undergone surgery and is now recovering. While Hurst's full recovery is a priority, the period required for it was longer than the production shooting schedule could accommodate, leading to the difficult decision to recast the role, end quote. Honestly, sucks to hear. I can imagine this would be a huge deal for Hurst, as someone who hasn't had too many leading roles, and I think he would have done a great job bringing Kratos to life, given his acting chops and his familiarity with the source material, being the voice of Thor in God of War Ragnarok and all. This also puts the show in an overall shaky position, as according to Deadline sources, 4 episodes had already been fully completed, so those will now need to be completely reshot with the new actor. So yeah, lots of time and money being burned, and some big shoes to fill for whoever they cast. Good luck to them. Okay, so what got announced this week? Well, big week for betas and mobile games, bad week for RTS fans and also mobile games. You'll see what I mean when I get there. First off the bat, Warner Brothers announced a new DC Comics fighting game, but no, it is sadly not NetherRealm's Injustice 3, which is just the shot in the arm that company needs right now. Instead, it's a mobile-only fighting game from a new studio called DCKO, or Dicko, if you let yourself look at it for more than 5 seconds. Good job to whoever came up with that name. Now, I'm sure the folks behind this one are putting their all into it, but it really does seem like a strange move to spin up another one of these when the shutdown of multiverses feels pretty fresh in memory. But I guess that mobile market is just a different beast. I don't know. No release date for this one yet, but I can't imagine many of you will be marking your calendars anyway. The mobile market isn't easy. Just ask Square Enix. It seems like they're shutting down mobile spin-offs left and right lately. The latest casualty is Final Fantasy XIV Mobile. Yes, the MMORPG port, which was being developed in partnership with Tencent. This had launched in China, but both Tencent and Square Enix have decided to pull the plug. The mobile version will go offline on September 30th, and the global version will no longer be in development. Yeah, I mean, look, personally, I wouldn't want to play an MMO like that on my phone, but then again, Austin plays Guild Wars on there, so, you know, each to their own. Speaking of RPGs, do you guys know Langrisser? It's a retro tactical JRPG series set in a fantasy universe that started on the Sega Genesis, sort of like a contemporary to Fire Emblem. It's been around for a little bit and it's been semi-successful. Anyways, they're taking another swing at it with a new mainline entry called Langrisser Sea of Sword, which is slated for PC, iOS, and Android. No other details yet, but with those platforms, you could only be going down the free-to-play route, so do set your expectations at the right level. A few network test announcements now. The first of them is a closed network test for the Dustbloods, the next game from Software, directed by the man himself, Hidetaki Miyazaki. And like Elden Ring Night Rain, it's primarily a multiplayer game, hence the network test. This one takes place on August 21st to 23rd, and you can bet your ass I'll be knocking on Nintendo's door to try to get in on that one. Let's just hope they haven't clicked on any of my recent Pokemon coverage. The second network test is one that more people can enjoy, an open beta for Marvel Tokon taking place this weekend, July 24th to 26th. Anyone on PC and PS5 can download this one and jump in. No PS Plus required. Whether you'll know what you're doing is another question, but this one's not strictly a multiplayer beta. There's a little bit of story mode and practice stuff in there as well, and most of the roster is unlocked. Nice. Last one is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4, which is holding its own open beta on August 28th to September 1st, and a closed beta for people who pre-order, which runs from 21st to 25th of August, if pre-ordering is your thing, which it shouldn't be. PC, PS5, Xbox Series consoles, and Switch 2 for this one. That is going to be very interesting to see. Digital Foundry, this is your moment to shine. A couple of shifting release dates around this one out. Hot Wheels Infinite Rush is the next racing game from Milestone, who did that anime racer called Screamer and a whole bunch of other sim games. The last 2 Hot Wheels games they did were actually fantastic, and this one looks good too. So good that they've moved up the release date by 2 weeks to September 10th. PC, PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch 2 for this one. One release date that's moving down, however, is the one for Game of Thrones War of Westeros. This is a real-time strategy game based on the HBO show being developed by Australian studio Playside. They've worked on a couple of other RTS games like Age of Darkness Final Stand and the VR version of Civ 7. Anyway, this one's now been pushed back to 2027 after targeting a release for this year. Reckon George will have finished writing Winds of Winter by then? I don't like our chances. All right, so what came out last week? Well, the week prior, we had a mystery deduction game very quickly hit that overwhelmingly positive watermark. That's our previous radar pick, The Incident at Galley House. And this week we've got another. The Mermaid Mask is the latest mystery adventure from SFB Games, who are also pretty good at making retro survival horror too. They're the studio that made Crow Country a couple of years back. The Mermaid Mask continues their existing series, and as mentioned, it's already hit that overwhelmingly positive mark on Steam on account of its puzzles, performance, and writing. But we'll take a look at a Steam review from Nell Wren, who seems to have finished it in 13 hours. Here's what they said, quote, "This really lived up to the hype. The writing was consistently tight and clever with entertaining and endearing characters. I rarely think that modern mysteries live up to the description of being Agatha Christie-esque, but honestly, this one felt very similar to her work. I did get stuck on and frustrated by some endgame puzzles, but 95% were intuitive and logical, and for many of the logical portions with accusations, the game rewarded paying close attention to and analyzing the connection between various clues in order to make you feel clever for solving them," end quote. Definitely one to put on your list for a quiet night. And speaking of quiet, Mice. Mouse game Moss was a standout platformer for VR platforms that got re-released in flat screen form last week, and seems to have held up quite well since its initial release 8 years ago. Moss, the Forgotten Relic, is enjoying a strong 80 on OpenCritic. Here's IGN, who gave it an 8, saying, quote, "Moss's world is stunning, its fairy tale nature is incredibly charming, and aside from a couple of minor issues with the camera and one weird bug that briefly stalled my progress, this is a very smooth remake that doesn't feel compromised by breaking free of its VR exclusive origins. It may be simple, but its combat and puzzles are satisfying and amusing, but for me, Moss's appeal comes back to Quill and her world, wondering what will happen to them and wanting to see this story through," end quote. Something brand new that came out last week was Wreck Runners. This was that co-op physics-based extraction game with gravity guns, made by a studio that's historically helped out other studios with developing games. This one came out on PC and consoles, no reviews from publications at this stage, and on Steam it's got under 30 user reviews, which isn't a lot, but it does have its fans. Here's Shawk7, who's put 13 hours into it and says, quote, "It's Repo, but instead of small maps, you have one larger island with different points of information. You drive around, loot as much stuff as possible, Repo style, don't break the stuff ideally. Protect your cruiser from the waves, extract, buy, upgrade, and repeat. It's a pretty fun loop and looks quite good. You definitely want at least one friend. Transporting stuff can be a pain otherwise. You'll also be in trouble if you park your cruiser midair and fall off, but solo is doable if you're good," end quote. Maybe one to put in that friend slot rotation? For a co-op game of the local couch variety, Heave Hove 2 from Devolver Digital and Le Cartel seems to have knocked it out of the park. This one came out on PC and Switch and is enjoying a mighty 87 on OpenCritic. Here's a review from a Steam user which seems particularly illustrative of how most people might play this. It comes from a user by the name of Grr. Quote, "My 10-year-old son and I have been playing this together in couch co-op and we've had an absolute blast. We haven't laughed this much at a game in a long time. The original Heave Ho was already great, but Heave Ho 2 feels like a real step forward. It puts much more emphasis on cooperation and every level becomes a hilarious exercise in communication, timing, and occasionally accidentally farting your teammate into oblivion. If you're looking for a fantastic couch co-op game to play with your friends and family, I highly recommend this one. It's chaotic, challenging, and incredibly funny," end quote. All right, now to Desktop Explorer, which was our radar pick from last week. The game where you explore a 1990s PC to solve the mystery of whose computer this was and why they disappeared. At the time of writing, this one's sitting at a very positive rating on Steam with around 420 reviews counted. Not enough reviews to make that overwhelmingly positive rating yet, but I reckon it'll get there soon. Here's Steam user Foghorn, who's put 8 hours into this thing, saying, quote, "Genuinely, what an amazing game. It's a very difficult yet very rewarding puzzle game that captures so much soul and character through amazingly designed puzzles with clear solutions that didn't feel bullcrap. An amazing story that you don't really need too much effort to connect with, and it's just fun," end quote. Finally, Splatoon Raiders, which brings Nintendo's stylish team-based competitive multiplayer game squarely into the PvE realm with a focus on solo and co-op play. This has landed at a strong 83 on OpenCritic, but definitely a few extremes on either side of the scale. Guardian, for example, landed on just 2 out of 5 stars for this one, saying, quote, "Splatoon Raiders feels like a concession. Nintendo taking aside one of its rangier, peculiar creations and asking it to be a bit more normal. This is the biggest surprise about Splatoon Raiders. It is pedestrian. If you played one of the dozens of modern cooperative action games, you've played this. Like its archipelago setting, Splatoon Raiders is far removed from what makes the main series so charming, and what's left here feels a bit too much like watching paint dry," end quote. IGN, on the other hand, scored this one 9 out of 10, saying, quote, "Splatoon Raiders is an amazing action RPG with an expertly executed loop. It has fantastic new powers with crazy upgrades that are worth chasing, tough battles that force you to put care into your build in order to overcome them, and a huge variety of fun level types to jump between. The pacing, balance, and difficulty curve are very impressive. I always had to work to get better, but none of the campaign ever felt like grinding or needless padding. This is the best Splatoon campaign yet, and one of the top games on the Switch too," end quote. As for myself, I reviewed it too. Link below the like button and your weekly reminder to hit that like button. Please and thank you. I really enjoyed this actually. I say that as someone who actually doesn't like Splatoon despite trying to get into it on multiple occasions. I think the thing that got me over the line is that this is a looter shooter, and I'm a bit of a sucker for that, of course. All of the supporting systems are fairly familiar, but they're very refined, clearly learning from the mistakes of other looter shooters, which is actually a bit of a rarity since these games are typically more than comfortable making the same mistakes over and over again. It's about 15 hours to get through the main campaign, and while I didn't feel compelled to push deep into the end game, I walked away very happy that I played it and very confident that this is going to pleasantly surprise plenty of people. If you want more detail, then like I said, my review is live now. But yeah, another W for Nintendo, who seem to be on quite a roll this year actually. Wait, was Metroid Prime 4 this year or last year? No, it was last year, never mind. My point still stands. Looking at Tears of Metal now, which came out into early access this week. This is basically Braveheart meets Dynasty Warriors in a 4-player co-op game. It's only been available for less than 24 hours at the time of writing, but it has a very respectable, very positive rating on Steam after 200 user reviews, around 94% of them positive. Here's Steam user Flo the Zilla, who gave it a thumbs up after 2 hours, saying, quote, "As a Scotsman myself, naturally I've always dreamed of a game that treats my country with the respect it deserves for its rich history and culture, and happily, Tears of Metal is doing exactly that and more. Hearing a properly pronounced Alba-gu-brath, that's definitely not how you say it, alongside the silly Scotland chants, makes this feel like it appreciates my culture, but is still willing to have a wee laugh about it too. The gameplay is rich, the stories are simple but fun and well written. Music, grunge metal, and Highland pipes. What isn't there to love?" End quote. And finally, Avatar Legends, the fighting game, a title that came back from the dead and has earned a respectable strong 82 on OpenCritic. Seems as if the animation and characters have translated over really well and the core fighting mechanics are up to scratch. The rest of the package perhaps isn't quite there yet. Still, it seems to get what matters most to fighting game players right, though the jury's still out about wider adoption or its legs in the competitive scene. Here's Mitch Saltzman from IGN, who we know loves fighting games. He landed on an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "The potential of Avatar Legends is immense. This is a gorgeous 2D fighting game that excels as both a throwback to a bygone era of sprite-based fighters and a faithful adaptation of the beloved cartoons it's based on. The lackluster story mode and complete absence of some basic options like difficulty settings for the CPU certainly make Avatar Legends hard to recommend to casual Avatar fans, but for fighting game fans looking for something with the sauce, Avatar Legends is about as saucy as it gets." End quote. Okay, so what's coming out this week? Well, relatively quiet over the next 7 days, which is kind of good for anyone looking to dig into Splatoon Raiders, finish off Black Flag Resynced, or spend some time with that Marvel toke on open beta. But there are a couple of things worth talking about. The first one, of course, is Halo Campaign Evolved, which launches on Tuesday the 28th of July, and man, you really couldn't have picked a more suitable game for Xbox to be releasing right after it fired 1,600 people and decimated a bunch of its studios, right? Here's the flagship Xbox mascot releasing on PS5 for the very first time, right after Microsoft changed their mind and said they might not be doing that ever again, who knows? Campaign Evolved, of course, remakes the single-player component of the original game and only the single-player component, and also marks a massive reset for the series in more ways than one. It sees the series jumping to Epic's Unreal Engine 5 and leaving behind the Blam and Slipspace engines, which have powered every Halo game to some extent since the series started. Definitely a pivotal moment here in ways that no one is particularly excited about, I don't think. Anyway, this is coming out to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles, and it will be day one on Game Pass. Changing gears in a very big way now, also coming out this week on Wednesday, July 29th, is the next game from indie studio Strange Scaffold, who are well known for spinning up new game concepts very quickly. They made that speedrunning FPS game, vampire slaying Max Payne likes organ trading simulators, a Ninja Turtles tactics game, and now their new one is called Truck-kun is Supporting Me from Another World? Alright, so let me try to explain this. The gist here is that you play a truck driver that is somehow linked to a fantasy elf girl living in a JRPG that's playing inside your head, and to help her out in these turn-based battles, you need to drive your truck around the city to make deliveries and run over people so she can somehow level up and escape her world. I would really like to know which substances were consumed in the making of this video game. This one's coming to PC and Xbox. Let me know if you get around to playing it and if it ends up making sense to you. I'd be really keen to hear about that. Another unique game that came out last year for PC was that roguelike strategy game The King is Watching. This is kind of like a base building, management, and tower defense game where your workers and units are only productive if you are looking at them. It's a good little game, and 1 year later it's coming to consoles this week on Wednesday, PC, Xbox Series consoles, and Switch to be precise. Last one for Wednesday is one that Osler and our team is really looking forward to. It's called Mistfall Hunter. This one is an extraction shooter, and wait, hang on, come back. This one has a twist, okay? It is a dark fantasy action RPG instead of a first-person shooter. Night Rain kind of showed us that there's a chunk of Souls-like appreciators willing to jump into multiplayer takes on that genre, and that game's still going really strong, by the way, so I'll be curious to see how this one lands next week. PC, PS5, and Xbox Series for this one. Last one for the week is the next game from the developers of Buckshot Roulette. This one is a bleak party game called Machine Party. Basically imagine Mario Party meets Saw, and you're most of the way there. It's got 2 to 4 player support, plenty of sadistic ways to mess up your friends, and an industrial soundtrack check because of course it does. This one's out on Thursday, July 30th, PC only. So we talked about a few unique games and genre mashups this week, but this next one definitely speaks to our most childish desires, so put this on your radar. All right. So just hear me out, okay? Dark Souls and dinosaurs. That is the stupidly simple premise that fuels Dino Blade, an action RPG where you play a Spinosaurus carrying a Buster Sword in its mouth that goes on to fight other dinosaurs who are also somehow wielding medieval weaponry in their mouths, and it just looks incredible. Look at these dodge rolls, look at these air juggles. It's so dumb, but so goddamn cool. The 7-year-old inside me is absolutely loving this shit. The game is actually a side project for developer Gene Nguyen, who's actually a senior animator at Sucker Punch and worked on Ghost of Yotei, and this is a project that started off as some creative animation practice and blew up into a fully fledged game. Will the game actually be good? Look, the jury is definitely still out, but at the very least you can do what we did and have a good time with the free demo on Steam, which will likely satisfy your curiosity. Dino Blade should be available by the time this goes up, and if you'd like to check it out, we've left a link to it over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff we recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Our feel-good story for the week was spotted by GameSpot, and it relates to Pokemon, but it is genuinely not safe for work. So if you have children in the room, hand them a Game Boy, ask them to leave the room and come back in, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes? Palworld recently showed the world how easy it is to make a monster by just making a thing and then loosely connecting it to Pokemon, leaving just enough distance to make sure you don't get sued. Believe it or not, they weren't the first to the punch on that trick though. In fact, they were about 10 years too late. Back in 2016, sex toy maker Geeky Sex Toys released a Pokemon-themed lineup of adult-oriented implements inspired by various Gen 1 Pokemon. The lineup quickly sold out back then, and I guess Geeky Sex Toys lawyers are feeling frisky because they're daring to re-release the lineup this year. The set includes 4 toys inspired by the starter Pokemon Charizard, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, as well as Pikachu. I will not describe what each item does since I don't think I can do that, but I will name them for you. Here we go. There's Bulb Pulse, Peaky Plug, and Squirty Blast. I hope that last one comes with a waterproof poncho or something. Sometimes the feel-good stories write themselves, but you know what don't write themselves? These episodes, roughly 8,000 words every single week, 416,000 words a year. Also, we can keep you fully up to date on what's going on in this crazy world of video games. And that doesn't even include all the stuff we write on the website. And as I said at the top, we write a hell of a lot on that website. 1 year in for This Week in Videogames.com, and we couldn't be happier with how it's going, and we couldn't be more thankful for all the support you've provided. So again, a huge thanks. And if you'd like to support what we do, then we'd love it if you sign up over there either for free or as a paying supporter so you can get ad-free versions of this show, unrestricted access to our exclusive content, and access to our buzzing community Discord. That supporter tier has a free 7-day trial, making it easy to check out what we're doing over there. But if you'd like to commit, we are running that sale for new subscribers right now. Get 10% off your annual subscription, but only for the next month or so. So do get in quick over at thisweekinvideogames.com. All right, that's all I got. A huge thank you for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye. Let me tell you a little bit about my relationship to this video sponsor, Surfshark VPN. See, back in the day, VPNs were this thing that people had kind of known about and heard about, but they probably thought, that's not for me. Then the age of streaming came along, and geo-blocking was a big thing where you couldn't get access to a streamer's full library of content because of where you lived. Surfshark VPN allowed me to sidestep all of that nonsense so I could watch whatever I wanted, no matter where I was, and that's useful both at home but also while traveling. More recently, governments around the world have begun to enforce draconic limits on the way that we use the net and the sort of personal information we have to provide in order to access certain sites. Surfshark has become even more important to me as of late for precisely this reason. And now, Surfshark is just something that I have turned on all the time for both my PCs and my mobile, so I can guarantee myself true freedom whenever I'm browsing the net. There's also an important security angle too. Email phishing scams are one of the most common ways bad actors gain access to your data, but Surfshark has a solution by monitoring your data for leaks and an email scam checker that helps protect against phishing attacks. Public Wi-Fi is another major hub for data theft, but Surfshark has you covered by hiding your IP address, keeping all of your activity private. It's super convenient since Surfshark can be used on a range of devices from PCs to phones to tablets and more, and their intuitive user interface makes it super easy to use. Sometimes it's as little as one click and you're away. I love it. I would never not have it installed on all of my devices. And if you want to check it out for yourself, you can visit surfshark.com/skillup. And if you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout, you'll get 4 extra months. A great deal for a great product. That's surfshark.com/skillup. Offer code SKILLUP at checkout for 4 extra months. Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.